Hello, people. Long time no see. I think the last video I did was right before Halloween. I think maybe I haven't done one since then, but I'm still busier than I would like to be, and I still have really not had a ton of time to explore new things. However, I am here with a double feature for you. It's not a double feature of two movies, though, like Sinister was. It's a double feature book slash movie. So I love to read used paperbacks. My favorite books are used paperbacks, preferably first editions, and I love to go to used bookstores and kind of get lost in the stacks. And I recently found one here in Lakeland that's almost all paperbacks. And I, of course, went to the Stephen King section because I was looking for The Stand, which I found, which I was really excited about. But while I was there, I picked up a few others, including Misery, and I've never read Misery. A lot of my Stephen King comes from my mom's collection. Whatever she had is what I read. And when I told her I was reading Misery, she was like, "I can't believe you've never read it." And I'm like, "Well, you didn't have it." And I didn't have it to steal, so I haven't read it. Um, so anyway, I thought this was a good time of year to read it, being almost winter, and we're in the Christmas season, and I live in Florida, so there's no snow, so I have to do something to kind of get me in the winter mood, and I thought, Misery, this will be a good time to read it, and it's a shorter Stephen King novel, so I thought, let's tackle this. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the book and the movie both, and I think I'm just going to kind of talk about them together. So if you haven't read the book or seen the movie, I really think you need to go read and watch it. Do both, then come back and listen to my thoughts. But so Misery, just to give a quick synopsis, is about a famous author of popular, basically romance novels. He has a wreck up in the mountains. He just finished writing his latest book, and he always goes to this lodge in Colorado to finish his books. And he's coming down the mountain, and he gets in a horrific car crash. And a local nurse named Annie Wilkes saves him from the car crash, takes him back to her home to take care of him. But plot twist, Annie Wilkes is basically schizophrenic. And she's his #1 fan. So she's this obsessive schizophrenic who's taking care of him. And that's really all you need to know. So the movie Misery is probably how most people were introduced to this particular story. It came out in, I believe, 1990, directed by Rob Reiner, starring James Caan, the great James Caan, the great Kathy Bates. She actually was nominated for and won an Oscar for Best Actress for this role, which is a big deal because, as we know, horror and comedy, anything genre, is just not even considered for Oscars. So when one of them pulls it off, it's a big deal. So the movie, is regarded as a classic. It's regarded as one of the best Stephen King adaptations ever, and I happen to agree with that analysis. Whenever you talk about Misery, people have a generally good reaction to it. Most people like it. And also it's one of those movies, you mentioned Misery, and you get kind of like a physical reaction from people. Mostly because of what what people have come to call the hobbling scene. If you've seen it, which hopefully if you're still watching this, you've seen it. That's the big scene. But it's just a really well written, well directed, well acted movie. It's just two people, mainly in one room, but it is tense, it is emotional, it's scary. It's not gory, really, by any means. There are a couple scenes that are bloody, and then, of course, the hobbling scene. But it's just a really well-made story, which isn't that what we really want movies to be? Just a really well-crafted story by somebody who cares. And that's what Misery is. Misery is one of the best examples of that. And so, you never know what you're going to get when you're kind of used to the movie version of a Stephen King story and then you read the novel, because his novels go deep They go way into people's psyche. I mean, sometimes they're thousands of pages long, and it's just always a different experience when you read the book. Especially, I mean, I've seen Misery a dozen times, you know. So when I think of Misery, I have Rob Reiner's film just already in my head. And so I was a little bit surprised with my reading experience of Misery. Very much has the same tone and the same feeling, and I think that Kathy Bates especially was like really great casting for Annie Wilkes. But there are some differences that were really surprising to me because Misery, the movie, I mean, feels very dark and serious and moody. I mean, it feels pretty gritty, especially for like a movie in the 90s. I mean, now we've seen all kinds of things in horror films, but I mean, it still feels relevant and gritty today. So I was really surprised to find that in the book is more brutal. The book is darker. The book is more serious. I mean, the book goes to some pretty low lows that I didn't expect because the movie's dark enough. I just didn't expect the book to go a step further. The biggest difference being that in the movie, Annie is very sweet a lot of the time, and she kind of, you know, has a shift when she goes from sweet Annie to psycho Annie. And when she's sweet Annie, it's sincere. You feel that it's sincere. You don't feel that it's fake. You don't feel that it's a put on. It's very sincere. And you think, oh, this woman, she really does love Paul Sheldon. She really does want to take care of him. She does want to do the right thing. And then when she has her psychotic breaks, that's when she becomes a monster. In the book, Annie Wilkes is monster from the word go. And even when she's being sweet Annie, it's just a put on. There's always this undercurrent of manipulation and malevolence. And that is just terrifying. I mean, Paul Sheldon is so much more screwed in the book than he is in the film. I mean, the man is just screwed. And he knows pretty much from his first interaction with Annie Wilkes that something is terribly wrong. And so from there, a lot of the same incidents happen in the book and the movie. But Paul starts out at a much darker place and then just keeps going to a darker place. And to the point where, I mean, he is just like ready to die. He doesn't really care if Annie kills him, if he kills her. He doesn't really care. His life and his will have been reduced to like nothing. And in the movie, you don't get that. I mean, he knows he's in trouble, but he doesn't really know how much trouble he is in until about halfway through the movie when Annie comes right out and says, no one knows you're here and you don't want anything to happen to me. And that's where he's like, oh crap, I gotta get out of here. And then not long after that is when he is able to kill her and get out. But in the book, let me get into the darkest part of the book. So I was waiting for the hobbling scene in the book because I had heard that in the movie, of course, she breaks his ankles with a sledgehammer. In the book, I had heard that she chops his feet off with an axe. So I was really I kept reading. It's more than halfway into the book when this happens. I mean, and he is already just very worn down, very miserable before she cuts his feet off. So by the time you get there, I mean, it is rough. And I will tell you that there are several people that say that they prefer the sledgehammer hobbling in the movie to the foot chopping in the book. I will say the sledgehammer hobbling is more creative, but the axe chopping is more horrific. And she only chops off one of his feet. And it's still, I believe, more horrific. There's a description of like, she goes to chop his foot off, and it doesn't go cleanly through the first time. And so she has to make a second swing, and how he hears the axe go through his leg and into the bed springs and like pop the bed springs. I mean, it is really horrific. And then King just casually works in later on in the narrative. Paul just mentions that just offhand, he's talking about something else, and he just offhand mentions that Annie chopped off his left thumb with an electric knife. And you're like, what? she chopped off your foot and then she chopped off your thumb with an electric knife. And so these are the things that really make the book just more brutal than the movie, when I thought that it really could not get more brutal. So another thing that's a little different too is that the sheriff, who I love in the movie, he is not in the book. There's a little bit of his character worked into some other characters, but there are other cops in the book. And Annie runs over the first cop that comes to her house. She like sticks like a wooden stake through his back, and then when that doesn't kill him, she runs over his head with a lawnmower. Runs over his head with a lawnmower. I mean, super brutal. But as I said, the bigger darkness in this book is probably just the way she psychologically manipulates Paul to just, he has no will to live. Now he does get out, as in the movie. So I feel like it's not really spoilers. You feel like he's going to get out. But at the end of the book, I mean, he has been so psychologically and physically tortured that the cops, when they find him, I mean, he looks like a shell of a man. He's like 40 pounds lighter. His skin doesn't look right. Of course, he's missing limbs. I mean, he just looks like a shell of a man. And I feel like in the movie, you just don't get the long-term just damage that she has done to this man. And you know that even if he survives, he is never going to be the same. Like, he is broken for life. And so the book, I feel like, goes much deeper than the film. Saying all of that, though, I will tell you that I appreciate the Annie that's portrayed in the film, in that you are able to feel a little more sympathy and empathy for her. And so I do like that they changed that about her. I actually like all the things they changed from the movie to the book. But this is a really rare case where I cannot really compare book to movie and say, oh, the book is better or the movie's better. I like them equally, honestly. I mean, I love how dark and miserable the book is. I will definitely read it again. But I also like how charming the movie is. While it is very disturbing, intense, it does have a charm, and Annie has a charm, and I like Kathy Bates in that role, and I like the charm that she brings to Annie, because you feel maybe a little more sad for Annie in the movie than you do in the book. But all the character changes and everything in the movie I think were fine, and I think worked really well. So I do think this is a really rare case where the book and the movie are both great. They stand well on their own, and I don't think you can really say that one is better than the other. So yeah, I think that's a first for me. It's a really kind of unique case, and that's why I wanted to talk about it mainly. So if you have not seen Misery, if you have not read the book, again, I hope you're not watching this if you haven't. But if you've gotten all the way through, that's okay. Go watch it and read it. And also, since we're in the winter season, that Misery is relevant to, I also have on the blog right now my holiday horrors, and there's also a list of my winter favorites on the blog. So check those things out, and I hope you guys will all have a Merry Christmas. And if you have thoughts about Misery that you want to share, please comment below. So I will talk to you guys hopefully sooner rather than later. Merry Christmas.